You're listening to a Meatsmith Harvest. This is the podcast that encourages and equips you to grow your home around the harvest. Welcome, Meatsmiths. This dialogue picks up where we left off in our last episode's conversation. You can find part 1 on our website, YouTube, or iTunes. If the content resonates with you, please consider supporting our team by going to patreon.com/Meatsmith and donating a small monthly pledge. This goes directly toward more free media headed your way. Thanks for staying tuned for part 2. Okay, let's go the opposite. Lean and tender. So this top box right here.
Yeah, so that is the category in which we are trying to shove all the meat from a quadruped. Right?
Okay.
Because everyone just wants to pan fry and broil.
That's right.
Broil's like just crazy high heat in the oven. Top down.
Yeah.
At least that is what the supermarket thinks you want to do.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like...
Yeah.
If you're going to look at the butchery that is done, if you're going to deduce how they're cutting the meat by looking at what is available at the supermarket, you're like, oh, they just want you to pan, fry, and broil everything. Because the assumption is you don't have time to cook. You just want to do it hot and fast and thoughtlessly and be done. Which is unfortunate. And I don't think that's who we are. But anyway, so lean and tender, that's like the 2 long tubes of tender meat along the spine of all 4-legged beasts. So pork chops, loin chops, T-bones, anything from the rib chops, New York strip, what do they call them? Ribeye steaks. There's so many names. Delmonico.
Yeah, just steaks.
Steaks from the... It's confusing because they give them different names, but they're all from the loin.
The loin.
And again, you can look at it. How would you, if you don't know it's from the loin, even though you do, if you think about it, it's not that hard. It has a circle in it. If it's got a very distinct, except for in beef. Yeah. If it's got a puck of meat, it's from the loin.
Yeah.
It's got a nice little circle.
Like a fillet.
Unless you're looking at the eye of the round, which is actually really tough, but it is a little circle. Anyway, never mind. So you can just feel it with your handies.
Yeah.
Pinch it.
Yeah.
You know, they probably don't like it if you do this at the supermarket. But, well, actually, if it's in steak form and it's at the supermarket, it's going to be from the loin. Except they do like to wrap lots of sirloin and rump from a beef cow as steaks. They do that a lot. And those are okay steaks. You can still pan fry them, just do them real rare. They're super lean. You will note there's not a lot of fat in there. Right. And they're much cheaper than ribeyes or strip steaks. So, yeah, those are tender and lean. That is hot and fast. That's pan fry. You could braise them, but you'd want to add fat. So you want a little fat in there, and you don't want to braise them for too long. Because they don't need long braising. They're already tender, meaning they're already chewable. Like, you can eat them in raw form. You might have a little bit of gristle, but the meat itself, in like a New York strip, if you cut off the outside silver skin that's on it, you can just chew it. It's tender. Particularly with pork, which is a much younger animal than beef. So it doesn't require prolonged cooking to break it down. But if you do subject it to prolonged cooking, you run the risk of sapping it of its moisture. So you would want to add fat and not cook it too long. And so, like, braising a loin of pork is totally fine. It'd be delicious. You know, white wine, lots of chopped onions, garlic bulb cut in half, throw it in there. Maybe some fennel. And then a mild stock, like a pork stock or even some chicken stock, and low and slow simmer. Doesn't even have to be submerged. You know, you could turn it halfway in if you want. It'll have a much more concentrated stock flavor. That's absolutely delicious. So you can braise the lean and the tender. Just beware of it drying out. So add fat and don't cook it too long.
Okay.
And the lean and tender you can also roast hot and fast. If you roast low and slow for a long time, again, you might dry it out because it doesn't have the native fat in the meat or around the meat to keep it moist.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. What about fatty and tender? Is that a category? That might be. Okay. Wait. Let's start. Let's do tough and lean because I know exactly what that is.
Well, we kind of talked about that. That's the bottom round, top side, silver side.
Yeah. That's the hind leg.
The hind leg of all quadrupeds are tough and lean.
Yeah.
Even pigs.
Yeah.
They might have, on a pig, it could have a huge fat cap along the exterior. Mm-hmm. This is the ham, by the way. But if you look at the meat itself, it's very lean. It's not impregnated with fat, nor are the muscles within the back leg separated by veins of fat. Mm-hmm. Therefore, it is still susceptible to dryness if you cook it too long. Mm-hmm. So one way to handle that, we talked about it, is to do it rare. Don't overcook it, number one.
Yeah, how would you cook it then?
So this is where hammering comes in. A lot of people hammer it. So you basically need to counter the toughness and the leanness in some way.
Yeah.
And I've never done this, but people will get a mallet if you have like a ham steak and you just bash it. And that will break it up. That'll take care of some of the toughness. And you flatten it, and then you can pan fry that thing. Mm-hmm. That's good. You could bread it and pan fry it. If you're going to roast it, just don't roast it too much. Leave it rare. You can roast a fresh leg of pork. It's absolutely delicious, like a leg of lamb.
So roast it for a short length of time.
Hot and fat, high heat to crisp the outside. Take it down to 350 until it's 137, 140 in the middle with a meat thermometer. And then give it a solid 40-minute to an hour of rest before you carve it.
So this is different from the tough and fatty, because tough and fatty, you can do a low roast.
Forever.
Right, but a tough and lean is a hot and high roast.
You could do even a low roast. It's just not for too long.
It's short.
Because the longer it cooks, the more fat you're going to melt out of it. The more moisture is going. The meat fibers will constrict and they squeeze all the juicitude out of there. Because there's just not enough fat in there to begin with.
Okay.
So you could also lard it. Inject it with your larding needle with noodles of pig fat, whatever it might be. Lard it.
You can hammer it. You can lard it. Roast it. You keep it rare.
Yeah, keep it rare in general. Mm-hmm. You could even braise it, but add some source of fat to the braise. Cube up bacon. Put it in there. Homemade bacon. And don't braise it too long. And it'll be awesome. The other genius thing, of course, is the ham.
Well, yeah, let's talk about brining.
So you could brine it.
One of our members mentioned, Kat, she mentioned brining something, even if it's been in the freezer, to kind of counteract that freezer element, because brining does also cover a multitude of sins. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, brining will imbue. Yeah, technically, if the meat is drinking the brine, and it kind of is. Mm-hmm. The meat with salty liquid. And then the salt has a similar act on the meat that cooking does, in that it breaks down protein binders, I think they are. Like 3-ring binders. And then it breaks them down. So it actually does make the meat more tender. So brining will help counter the toughness and the dryness of a tough and lean cut. Consequently, humans in general have found it very beneficial to basically universally brine the back leg of pigs. We call it ham.
Yeah.
Such that now, it's confusing. We even apply that word ham, which means brined back leg of pig, to a fresh back leg of pig that has not been brined. Yeah. It's just a leg of pork, but it's so ingrained because ham makes so much more sense than any other form. So that's ham, and that will imbue it with flavor and moisture, and even help keep it tender. So when you put a leg of pork in a brine for 3 weeks, and you could put the pork in a bucket, pour water in to submerge the bucket, weigh it, Subtract the weight of the bucket. And then weigh 2% the weight of the pork and the water in salt. Dissolve that exact amount of water, or heat it and dissolve the salt in it, and then let it chill, and then put the pork back in the bucket with the now what is a brine in your fridge for 3 weeks. And then you take that out, and I would let it hang for 2 weeks. You could even cold smoke it, which would be wonderful. But that lets the salt travel a little further to the interior of the meat in the warmer temperatures of your kitchen. And then you could simmer it and then roast it. And even after simmering and roasting, that tough, lean cut, see what I mean?
Yep.
Still won't be tough and lean.
Yeah.
It'll be juicy and tender.
Yeah.
Because that's the magic of brining.
Yeah.
It imbues it with juicitude and tenderfaction.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
Brining is a cool thing. Do it.
Yeah, and then, well, because then at that point, you then treat it like a lean and tender, or almost like a fatty and tender.
Yeah.
Like you roast it.
It kind of makes it a lean and tender.
Right? Yeah.
It does a little bit, yeah. Yeah. And you could do a much saltier brine, too. I guess the brine I just recommended, you wouldn't actually have to simmer that in water.
Yeah.
Because that meat would not be too salty. But if you wanted to make a nice storage brine that you could put in the fridge and put meat in it for months, it's going to be real salty and like more like 17% salinity rather than 2. And it will be, that meat will be really salty. And so an initial simmering step is essential just to keep things from being too salty to eat. And that simmering step is cooking the meat, but it's not drying it out, even if it's lean.
Yeah.
Because of the magic of the brine.
Cool.
The effect of salt.
Okay. Okay, can you think of an example for this fatty and tender box?
I would say back fat.
Right.
Solid back fat.
Yeah.
It's quite tender.
Yeah.
And it is fatty. I guess you could say baby back ribs. They have a little bit of fat on them, and they're supposedly more tender. Well, yeah, foie gras. Not that I've ever had it. But that's fatty and tender.
Fatty. Bacon. Where's bacon? Or where does the belly fall in here?
Yeah, that's fatty and tough.
That's true. Yeah,
that's
tough. That's
what
I thought.
Yeah, it does need some braising or prolonged cooking. I guess I think of like a really well marbled, really nice loin steak from a cow. That can be fatty and tender.
Kind of marbled.
Yeah.
Where you just sear it.
They get majorly marbled.
That's true.
Okay, yeah. So in that, and sometimes we have majorly marbled pork too. I mean, just the marbling itself, you'd look at that and say, that's downright fatty.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And that means there's a little more forgiveness. And this is where I would almost, utter the anathematized statement that you could cook that particular steak a little longer. Just to melt a little more of that fat. Not to get it out, but I feel like it makes it more available to your taste buds.
Right.
I'm not saying overcook it or anything like that.
Yeah.
But there's a little more wiggle room there for
so the fat is
not
liquefied.
watching it like, oh no, I'm going to overcook it, get it off.
Yeah. So that is more of a either eat it raw like back fat, or melt it in a kind of pan searing kind of way.
Yeah, offal kind of falls into that category.
Yes.
It has a different kind of fat than what is around muscle tissue, but it's fatty and tender.
It is.
Liver is. I mean, it depends on when you cook it, but it's got lots of oils. It's delicate.
Yeah.
It is tender, so it's just don't cook it too much.
Everything falls into one of these categories.
Yeah.
Where do trotters? They're like lean and tough.
Correct. That's what trotters are. They're lean. They're almost like meatless. You know, they have it's all collagen and fascia and connective tissue. So braise. Do braise. I would even put confit, which is to cook something completely submerged in lard. I would put that in the braise category. You're just braising something in fat.
Right here, fatty and tough. No.
Or even lean and tough. Anything. I'm just saying, confiting is a kind of braising.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. I'm going to show this, but I feel bad because my handwriting is so bad. I mean, someday when like we actually get our act together and we do a cookbook, we'll make it look a lot nicer.
That'd be fun.
But
yeah, I mean, usually when I communicate these things to people, like especially working at the farmer's market, you don't have a lot of time. You can communicate one thing and one method, usually linked to one piece of meat.
Yes.
Because I remember people would come up and they would, you know, just kind of have this dazed look on their face because none of us really taught how to cook meat. Few of us are. So what do I do with this? And you really have to bring them along. And frequently you sell them on roasting before you sell them a roast. And, or, you know, they're simultaneous, you know, and so many times I can't even tell you, like, because people don't know what they want. And sometimes they even know that what they want, they know that they want to want more. Like, and so they're kind of waiting for you to call that up out of them.
Yeah.
And just like, go get the 8-pound Boston shoulder roast and give it to this little tiny woman right here. And she is going to love it, you know? And so frequently, a lot of us just like, you grab it and like, how about this? Okay. You wrap it up and then you tell them, here's how you're going to cook this. You're going to put it in your oven at 300 degrees for 6 hours. And then that's it. And then you're going to take it out and let it rest for an hour. And then going to carve it. And it was so gratifying to have people come back the following week. And they would be like, I cooked that thing and it was the best thing I've ever tasted.
Right.
And I did it.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It is so easy.
Yeah.
And it will taste better than, I mean, just about anything you can purchase. Even at a really fancy restaurant. Because all they're doing is braising, pan frying, and roasting. But they don't even have the luxury that you do at your home. You know, they've got to portion everything. You know, maybe they can't quite afford to get the quality that you can because they have different financial restrictions being a restaurant. And they've got to make it look pretty on a plate, and they've got to make several servings at the same time and put them under a heat lamp for a few minutes. And then, but you know, it's just, they have lots of limitations that you don't necessarily have.
Yeah.
And so the only thing that separates you from a really nice restaurant is knowing how to braise, pan fry, and roast.
Yeah. And then once you know those, it really gets unlocked in your brain because you hear the word braise and you're like, oh, well, that's what I did to that lamb shoulder.
Right.
Oh, and I guess it'll work the same exact way with this pork hock.
Absolutely.
Braising is braising.
Yeah. But maybe I'll mix up the braising liquid this time.
Yeah.
I could do apple cider, maybe even like a little slosh of apple cider vinegar. Maybe I'll stir in a little bit of molasses, just a little bit. And then some chicken stock.
Right.
Whereas last time I used, you know, beef broth and red wine.
Yeah.
Just simmer it in those different mediums.
Yeah.
See what happens.
That's pretty cool. What were you going to say?
Well, I was starting to think about braising again.
Okay.
Like you can do what we said, where you just take the pot, you know, with the liquid and the finished, just take it right to the table.
I know what you're going to say.
You're done.
Yeah.
Or you could go an extra step if you want to be extra fancy. If you have the time. You lift the meat out of there and then you strain the cooking liquid through, you know, like a strainer, maybe even a kitchen towel to make it real clear. Well, not clear, it'll be dark, but, you know, it won't have particles in it of vegetables or meat or fat globules or whatever else you put in the braise. Hopefully your mirepoix, carrots, onions, and celery. It's just nice and aromatic, but not utterly essential. You know, if you don't have celery, still put an onion in there. But whatever. You strain that liquid And then you can reduce it. You boil that. And you're going to quickly make meat syrup, this like inky, wonderful sauce. And if you want to thicken it a little bit, you can put in just a little bit of mustard. Put in some nice mustard, you know, like half a teaspoon of mustard, and stir that in, and that will help thicken it. Mustard is an emulsifier.
Or jelly, right?
Oh, yeah. If you want to sweeten it, put some jam in there.
That'll thicken it too. A
little bit, yeah. And the further you reduce it, the more unctuous and oily, you know, thick it will become. You can even put some heavy cream, or you could put nothing in it.
Yeah.
Just reduce it.
Yeah.
And then you could actually pull all the meat off the bone, so it's pulled. And now, with all that meat off the bone, just put that right in the sauce that you've reduced by half or whatever, and stir it up a little bit and turn the heat off.
Yeah.
Bring that out to the table.
Yeah.
Now you've got all this wonderful pulled meat in this sauce that is reduced, so it's shiny. You know, all the meat is shiny and unctuous, and then you just want to have some mechanism on the table for the absorption of the sauce.
Right.
And that could be polenta. That could be rice, like from a rice maker, like white rice.
Yeah.
It'll be awesome. Or it could be bread.
Yeah.
Something to get that sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting hungry.
Yeah, I think that's part of the braising.
Yeah.
One more part of the braising thing.
Yeah, I actually was going to say one more thing about braising a while ago, which was you mentioned liquid bubbling. That's low bubbling.
Oh, right. Yes. Of course, that's essential to knowing how to braise. No rolling boils.
Yes.
Don't do it.
You want to boil the stock later when you're reducing it, but when the meat's in it, it's a gentle, delicate kind of a simmer.
And even then, you only want to boil the stock when you're reducing it when there's no particles in it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they scald and they make it bitter. Not so fun.
Yeah.
So when you're braising, it is a tremulous simmer, you know, and it's like making stock or a soup. You can start the heat at full blast if you want, with the meat in there and the liquid.
Just to get the temperature up.
Yeah, and then when you start to see the surface starting to go, I'm going to start boiling. You know, it's just tremuling. Then turn it down by half, the heat. And then watch it again, because it's want to boil again on you. And then turn it down by half again. And maybe even one more time. And you will lock in what we call a simmer.
Yeah.
And that is just going to be bloop, bloop, bloop.
And that does actually break down the meat fibers.
It's better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not scalding fat. It is a lower temperature, even though there's still a bubble. So maybe it's technically a boil, but I don't know. It's proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
Even if the science isn't there, but it works better. So the simmer. There's also the whole art of deglazing.
Yes, that would be like an addendum to the roasting section,
and
right?
the pan frying.
Right. Okay, go ahead and let's talk about that.
So just like we could turn the braise into some boneless meat and a sauce, you can turn the roast and the pan frying into the primordial stew of a sauce. So when you pull a roast out of the oven, you have crispy caramelized meat bits on the bottom of the roasting pan. So pour the fat out into your waiting receptacle that lives at the side of your kitchen for dripping, because you're going to fry your breakfast potatoes in that, or whatever, your breakfast egg. And then, so keep that dripping. And then there's still crispy little charred bits and maybe even just a little bit of fat left in the roasting pan. And so this doesn't work with glass. You will break a glass Pyrex roasting pan. You want this to be, something that is metal. You put it over the hob, you turn the heat on, and you put it over that, and quickly it's going to start to heat. And then you pour wine or something acidic. You need some kind of acid. Wine is great. You can even do coffee. That'll work. Leftover coffee or something. Something with acid. What else have I used? I've used vinegar. Vinegar will do it. Some sherry vinegar. Pour that right onto the heated crispy bits. And with your wooden spoon, take it and scrape it right after you pour it on. And that acid will lift the crispy, delicious, caramelized, burnt ends of the meaty business off of the pan. So it's a great way to clean your pan. by the way. This is a
Yeah.
double purpose.
Yeah.
And it creates a wonderful sauce. And so once you scraped it off with the application of the vinegar, you could tip in a little more stock or stir in, you know, or pour in more wine. Like do a half a bottle of wine and then really reduce that wine.
Yeah.
You could even sprinkle in a little bit of sugar if you wanted to, because that'll thicken it a little bit.
Honey.
Or honey. And you know, you're stirring the whole time, scraping the bottom, and it's quick. And when it looks like it's starting to get oily or thickening a little bit, just call it good and pour that on top of the meat. So that's deglazing. And you can do that, as you would imagine, with something you pan fried also. Yeah.
How many people do you know you would say truly share your back to the land values? Or your passion for home-scale craft meat curing? Or simply love the multifaceted beauty of a good meal as obsessively as you do? Maybe a handful? At farmsteadmeatsmith.com, we've created an online community of hundreds of omnivores from around the world and a platform for them to learn from and inspire one another. In addition to our major semi-annual hands-on educational event, The Family Pig, here at our Pacific Northwest homestead, over at farmsteadmeatsmith.com, we host a purely digital membership program with an archive of film and textual resources years deep now, for you to dive deeper into your food journey with. And both our classes and online program include access to our private community Facebook page for your continued education and fellowship. We've been told that our classes are life-changing and the membership program unparalleled in quality and quantity. To get a taste of our education, search farmsteadmeatsmith.com and our YouTube channel for our free films, conversations, and downloads. Explore how we and other meatsmiths across the globe may best come alongside you, putting the knife in your hand, article by article, and comment thread by comment thread, and can support you in building your home around the harvest. Please head to farmsteadmeatsmith.com today. Okay, I've got a little summation here before we wrap it up. Okay, so here's my notes, okay? Gosh, got myself into this. Okay, so the principle or the cooking method.
The common rules of cookery,
There we
right?
go. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Common rules of flesh cook.
That was... Okay, you're going to have to explain that joke.
No, I'm interrupting.
We're coming up with taglines for our
it's okay.
merchandise someday.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway. Okay. So we've got lean and fatty over here on the
Y-axis?
Y-axis. Very good. And then tough and tender on the X-axis. Okay, so in the category, we call it box A, where it's lean and tough. We need to possibly hammer and pan fry something. Roast, hot and high and short. We could lard it and, attempt to keep things rare.
Yeah.
We could also, see my little asterisks? We could brine these things.
Yeah. Oh, so another method of brining would be marinating.
Brining
That's like
marinating.
it's a quick brine. It's a short. It's lots of acid, some salt, all of that breaks down the tough and enhances the juicy.
Marinating for a couple hours or for a day or like
both.
It's kind of like brining almost.
I guess when I think of the best marinades that make sense to me are the ones that can happen in the space of a day, because I like to leave the meat on the counter in the marinade. I'm not putting that in the fridge. I want it to be warm.
Yes,
because that will help the traveling of the marinade throughout the meat. I don't actually even care if some flies lay eggs on it. Not a big deal. I want it. I want it to warm up. Because I also don't want to be chasing the chill out of the meat in the oven.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not essential, but it's real nice to not waste cooking time chasing refrigerator chill out of your fresh meat. It's kind of nice to let it sit out on the counter for a while. It'll dry out the surface. So you enhance the crisping capacity of the exterior of the meat. So with roasts, especially birds, man, leave that chicken out. Pull it out mid-morning. cook it for dinner. Mm-hmm. And yes, it might get some flies around it.
Okay.
You could put a kitchen cloth over it if that eases your mind.
So then what I've done is I've created a second page that, like, oh, wrong way. If we were great, we would make it transparent.
Oh, an overlay?
Cut of meat. Yes, an overlay. There we go. So in this box A category, I've put some examples. Hind leg, round, ham, trotters. And then up here, I just wrote birds and rabbits, which might be it might be tender, but they're both lean.
Yeah.
So either lean and tough or lean and tender, and those are your birds and your rabbits, depending on how old they are.
Unless it's palmipeds, in which case they are fat.
They're fatty. You're right. Okay. Okay, then in box B, which is the lean and the tenders, we pan fry or broil them.
Which is like hot and fast roasting.
Yeah, in the oven, yeah. And then add fat. And a little asterisk, we want to deglaze these things.
Yeah, lean and tender, you could also quickly braise.
Okay.
It's a short braise. Because the longer you braise a lean thing, the drier it becomes. So you just want to not over braise. Because you don't have to, because it's tender. Right?
And then an overlay on that are your loins, your tenderloins, your chops, your T-bones, your ribeyes, your steaks in general, unless it's the one exception you mentioned.
From the round?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we should codify this.
Yeah, I know.
We should
That's what I'm
print
saying.
it up and...
Okay.
Yeah.
People could also take screenshots of this.
What is it? It's the Cookery Quadrant.
Okay. In the fatty and tough box, which is our box C, this is your low roasters or your braisers. And when you braise, meaning you find that tremulous simmer. Mm-hmm. And
by low roasting, we mean long time.
I mean low and slow.
Low and slow. So
yeah.
Prolonged roasting.
Exactly.
At a lower temperature.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then...
Because it's braising itself in its own melting fat.
Yeah. So examples of these would be the shoulder, the belly, if you want to do a belly, which is delicious. Your confit items.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Well, confit is a cooking method that I would put with braising. It's in the category of... Okay, yeah. We're just semantics of the graph.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, when you publish a book, you can fine-tune this.
No, I'm going to leave the graphing to you.
No, there needs to be... This is really rudimentary, but I'm thinking this is a
Shoulder,
great start
belly,
for people.
tough and fatty, head. The head is tough and fatty.
I was going to ask you where the head fits into all this.
Especially on a pig, the head is tough and fatty.
This would be in this box.
Which is to say that recipe that we've given for the Boston shoulder roast, that's how you could roast your next pig head. Do it.
Yes.
Tough and fatty. Now, again, this is assuming a scalded and scraped pig, which means all the fat is intact and all the skin. It's all tough and it's all fatty. So slow roast. It's never going to dry out. You can cook that sucker at 300 degrees for 6 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, heads are all day. And then maybe whack it up for the last half hour just to super crisp that skin. You know, with a bunch of root vegetables in there, in the pan, towards the end.
Okay, and then in the final box D, we've got raw or pan searing as the method. This is for the tender fatties.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I've never
kind of
thought as tender fatty. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost a non-existent entity, but there's,
There are, I think... fat doesn't really present itself as a challenging thing to cook.
That's true.
It's a challenging thing to eat. People do not always have a taste for it.
Thus the back fat and the offal.
Right.
That's where we've put those things.
Yeah. Interesting. We don't like tender fatty things.
You're right.
We just figured that out.
No, this could be our genius. So this will be our ticket. The thing that we're understanding about American cuisine.
The tender and the fatty.
And what we're trying to impart. This is like our contribution to the not the industry, what am I trying to say? like this is our unique spin on things, or kind of understanding of how we operate as American eaters. We don't like tender, fatty things.
I think that's a deal killer.
Because I've put
head cheese.
You're right.
Can be tender, and once the finished product, when you're eating it, you experience it as tender and fatty and gelatinous. It's the mouthfeel of tender, fatty. I think also of a huge fat cap on a pork chop. It's cooked hot and fast. Yes,
fat caps.
I have had foie gras once in my life, and it was years ago, and I was, I think I was too good for it. I was not into it.
It's why we have a hard time.
But before I even tried it, I was prejudiced against it. And when I tried it, I do not remember the taste right now, but I remember saying to myself, this just tastes like a solid piece of back fat.
Yeah.
It's exactly what this tastes like.
Yeah.
And I think it's delicious.
Yeah.
But it is like you took a cube of back fat and you fried it on both sides real gently and then served it.
Yeah. It's why we have a hard time just like eating a spoonful of butter or cod liver oil or like just the pure fat. Even if it has some protein flesh in it.
Yeah.
I don't know. We like that bite to it.
Yes. So like the little globules of fat that not even the most, the most conscientious butcher can trim out of a beef rib steak, where there is a curl of fat right in there. It's not on the exterior, so they can't get to it with their little knives. That is part of a piece of meat that you cook hot and fast. Okay. So you can pan fry a rib steak. It's quite good for a ribeye. And so that fat is very lightly cooked. It's also kind of tender. It's a tender fat. So I would call that tender and fatty. And it's delicious if you eat it while it's still hot.
Yes.
So that needs to be your first bite out of that steak.
Okay.
If it cools, it becomes waxy.
Yes.
Which is a thing that ruminant fat does because it's more saturated than pig fat. And the same thing can be experienced from fat lamb. Lamb fat, people tend to not like it, but I think it's only because they've waited till it's chilled.
Yeah.
So tender and fatty has to be eaten while it's still hot, while it's still warm, before it has cooled into a waxy, unpleasant thing. It's not good when it's waxy.
So that's my little asterisk on that section. Eat hot for the raw and the pan-seared fatty, tender things.
Yeah.
And then our examples here are even like baby back ribs. People do like because it's very fleshy. But
they're pretty lean too.
A marbled loin steak and head cheese, fat caps, foie gras.
Yeah. It's hard because that's branching just categorically. It's a difficult category to fill because we're branching into prepared foods.
There's nothing
kind of different
that easily fits in that category.
Yeah, that comes straight off of the animal.
Yeah.
Maybe the fatty rump of some of those Middle Eastern sheeps. Those are so weird. But I don't know. Yeah, I'd have to think about that more.
Yeah, well, that's a really good recap. And I hope that people can be helped by that. You know what I wanted to be able to do with this episode or the pair of episodes is almost give a little something to the farmers that we encounter that, like, they want us to give a class for them and their customers because their customers are just lost. And they just need this little frame of reference.
Yeah, the farmer can tell that one of the reasons it's hard for them to sell their beautiful product is that people don't know how to cook it.
Yeah.
They don't want the whole sheep. They just want the lamb chops. It's like, yeah, but I raise whole sheep.
And their butchers know they don't want it, so they take off the fat. And then the farmers are mad. And the customers, they have this fatless, these fatless cuts. But then they don't enjoy it as much because
It's just like the supermarket.
It kind of
They're trying to go back to the supermarket cuts.
That's right.
But it will definitely taste better. But it's
So we've talked about this vicious cycle, and I think ultimately it does come down to consumers educating themselves on how to cook well.
It's also farmers wanting to eliminate the middleman. Like they're tired of taking 30 lambs a month or whatever to auction or to the slaughterhouse, where most of the lambs are trimmed. They're not getting the price that they want. They're raising better lamb than this. So why can't their customers just come buy it direct? They should just come and slaughter it on the property and take it home, and cook the whole thing and love it. So I really feel like the bottleneck is the cookery. Yeah. Is that people have a fear of meat cookery. They're intimidated by it. Yeah. Yeah.
What were you going to say?
I was going to tell people the one resource that really helped us. Yeah. In our understanding of meat cookery.
Okay, wait, hold that thought. Because I just had another thought, which was I tried your salami again.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And I think that fits in that fourth category.
Right.
Because it was, so we did, our last podcast episode was on the salami. And it was great. But it has improved quite a bit. And if I wasn't jumping out of my skin last episode, I am now. Yeah. It just had a couple more weeks. And
it's like 18 weeks now instead of 15. Yeah.
It was okay, this is a bad word, but it was oily. It was buttery. It was like eating tender fat. Yeah. It was so melt in your mouth. Yeah. It wasn't like salami at the grocery store, which they're not all bad, but that has more bite to it. This is more soft and delicate. Yeah. And you would be able to talk about why, perhaps, but it was so good.
Yeah, I would say the flavor became more cheesy. Yeah. And I think cheese is probably the ultimate example of tender and fatty. Huh. Even though it's not a meat, you can chew it.
You're right.
It is made of fat. Like that's
absolutely
what cheese
You're
is.
Absolutely right. Yeah, and I don't know if we're I don't know if we're in if Americans like their meat tasting like cheese, that kind of.
I know, because to me, part of the essential flavor of a cheese flavor is a little bit of rancid oil. That's part of it. That's part of the piquant yumminess. Piquant, Yeah. Or wherever you emphasize that word. That's part of it.
Okay. I think you're right.
Yeah. And I have had people, I had someone on the island who likes, I slaughter pigs for them and they have their own curing chamber and they cure salami. He uses, the Roman charcuterie cookbook and gets good results. And, but he did give me a slice of something once. He always likes me to come and see his cures and tell him what I think of it. And he sliced up some salami and he gave it to me. I was like, yeah, this is great. It tastes great. I think it's delicious. There's even dryness all the way through, but he thought it was too fatty. Huh. Yeah, which is really interesting. Okay. That concept never even enters into my brain. Yeah. And I think that there is maybe even in the Italian culinary traditions, the tender and the fatty doesn't fit so well in there in that context. I think.
Yeah, maybe.
For lots of different historical reasons. Okay. They've never really fully embraced the ultimate tender and fatty, which is the foie gras. Right. It just doesn't figure hugely in their culinary tradition, which is weird because they're surrounded by countries that have. Yes. Germany and Hungary and France.
France, yeah.
Big time.
I never thought about that, but I think you're right.
Yeah, it's just not huge. It's not a huge part of their thing. They still have fegato. They'll still have...
they bathe themselves in olive oil.
They like calf's liver.
Oh, okay.
Very mild liver, but not crazy about the fat and poultry liver.
The animal fat, yeah. Because they have a lot of olive oil in everything.
Right, which is a totally different experience than a textured, tender animal fat, Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You're right. That would be interesting to research.
Yeah, Italian.
Okay, tell us really quick about where we've gotten.
Yeah, so I think the original, when I learned how to cook meat, it was literally a 8-minute conversation with a guy I was working with at Seabreeze. With Charlie. Because he knew to sell meat at the market, you needed to sell people on braising, pan frying, and roasting. You needed to learn how to cook again.
Yeah.
And so I think he actually just verbally gave me a rundown of that.
Yeah.
And then, like, literally in 5 minutes, he just said, braise, pan, fry, and roast. And then he handed me a book by Bruce Adelis. I just remembered his name today.
Oh, okay.
And I've never looked at it again. But it's a very general meat cookbook. Mm-hmm. And at the time, it was helpful to me. Because I think he even has chapters that summarize that.
Do you know the name of the book?
No, Meat Cooking or something. It's like Bruce Adelis's just super basic fundamentals of meat cooking.
Okay.
And it was good. It was really beneficial. And I think he's got chapters named that. And if these are indeed universal rules, you would expect to find them echoed throughout all great cookbooks. And they are. Like, this is so not new. Yeah. For a lot of people that will listen to this, they're like, yeah, I know, come on. But we're still, like, so excited about it. No, really. Yeah. You can braise, pan, fry, and roast. But then what really kind of expanded our vocabulary and our culinary vocabulary in the kitchen and helped us dive a little deeper into braise, pan, frying, and roasting, understand general methods rather than trying to memorize individual recipes. And we haven't. It is the River Cottage cookbook. Yeah. I feel like this guy just aced the genre. So good. This is a cookbook that tells you how to raise the animals that you're cooking and how to grow the vegetables, catch the fish, and pluck the fruits of what you are cooking. So the assumption throughout the whole thing is that the most decisive ingredients in any recipe are the provenance, where they come from, the quality of the ingredients. That's it. That's 90% of the battle. And then he gives you general techniques.
I mean, honestly, one of the reasons why we haven't written a book yet is because every time you sit down to think about it, you're like,
I just think of this one.
He already did it.
Yeah, it's done. I mean,
yeah.
This is it. This is the tome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Between the cookbook and the meat book.
Right. So this is the River Cottage cookbook. He's got the River Cottage meat book. They're just awesome. And, you know, actually, I don't know if he goes into extensive meat cookery in this one. He might.
Well, he goes into pork curing even more than the meat book.
Yeah.
I remember. But
how to eviscerate your chickens. If you even just look at the recipes, they fall in those categories.
That's true. Yeah.
Braising, pan frying, and roasting. Yeah. Down to crispy pig ears. Steak tartare. Roast beef. Corned beef. Anyway.
Yeah.
Really good one.
I just thought of actually that fourth category again. Which is becoming a rather large category actually now that we're talking. Would that be where you'd put pâtés, your fatties and your tenders? Do you cook?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's departing from the category of fresh cuts from an animal.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
So I don't know.
That's
because those are all the examples of tender and fatty that we can think of. It's like, oh, it's all prepared stuff. It's salami. It's foie gras. That's
charcuterie.
Yeah, it's charcuterie.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe charcuterie is the concerted effort to eat tender, fatty things.
Yeah.
In a pleasant way. Such that we develop all these strategies that you can see around a charcuterie board, like tangy things, pickled vegetables, mustard, sauerkraut, sour beer, wine, nuts for texture. You need the crispy and the tangy to eat the tender and the fatty. And we even cure things in charcuterie and give them their own sourness and acidic flavor to cut the fatty. And they're all tender because they're all prepared. They're all chewable. Yeah, that's like, that could be the single most tricky category in the raw state, but the most desirable in the prepared state. It's like the thing we we love the most, but could possibly hate the most, you know? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's fun to stretch the limits of our categorization.
Yeah. What are some of these other books you have here?
I like this one. As a family that with 6 children, we literally cook every single meal. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day. We sit down at a table and we eat 3 times a day together every single day. It's kind of crazy. And it's a huge effort. It is a monumental effort. And so I always welcome simplified, I don't mean easy or even like convenient, but simple and pure recipes that fit in with the domestic scene. And those are peasant recipes. So they are simple and pure, meaning few ingredients. Fewer, less is more. Fewer ingredients, more flavor, because we have emphasized the ingredients, which diminishes the burden on the preparation. Like we were saying, you don't have to just, in a fit of genius and turmoil, try to squeeze flavor out of everything. It's already there. You've only got 3 or 4 ingredients. Just put them together and put it out there. And I feel like that's what peasant cookery brings. And so this is a good one, which we've recommended before. Given to us by the Corcorans, I think. The Old World Kitchen, Elizabeth Laird. She just goes through lots of European countries, Western European, Central, and Eastern. And records a lot of they're all simple. A great example is the Heaven and Earth recipe that we've done lots. It's potatoes and apples. Cube them all up, fry them up.
With bacon, right?
Oh, yeah. We put some bacon in there. Cube up the bacon first. Then the potatoes. And when they're just about there, then put the apples in, because the apples are real quick. And if you want to get fancy, you could then pour in some heavy cream and it'll be saucy. And that's real good. But it's so easy. It's so good. And it's 3, maybe 4 ingredients. And we're done. We're good for that meal.
Yeah.
So I really like the peasant cookery, and that's a good source of it.
Yeah. I think one thing that I get from, at least I've gotten it from Julia Child, and I know Elizabeth Laird would agree, and definitely Jane Grigson. And then another lady that I'm reading right now who's more in the education field rather than food is Charlotte Mason. And they all say about meals that actually if you want to digest well, you need to be happy.
Oh, gosh. Of course.
You need to be enjoying what you're eating.
You can't be like an adrenaline-infused pursued animal.
Exactly.
You can't be panicking for your life.
No.
Okay.
You can't be chased.
So stress is bad?
Stress is bad,
Yeah, it's a killer.
Or holding your nose, you know.
Yeah.
Just get through it.
Yeah.
So I've just read that from Charlotte Mason about it's important to create an ambiance of delight and conversation with your kids, and so that they're enjoying things.
Well,
and
I could work on that. Yeah.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
We're definitely working on it.
So as not to inhibit your digestion.
Yeah. And I just read that from Julia Child this morning. I thought, like, you know, it's just one of those principles that's easy to get lost, to forget when you're in the hubbub or the busy, what am I trying to say? Yeah, just the rat race of the day. To enjoy, or like even if you're trying to diet and you're trying to lose weight, you definitely don't, you just want to eat modestly. But right, you shouldn't, virtue is not excessive in either direction. You want to find that golden mean. So I think even diet, it applies here, is don't eat too much, but eat rich. Eat little and eat rich, you know, and to really enjoy what you're doing. And if you've put forth the work anyway, then you have the sauce of labor behind everything too, which helps you enjoy everything, even those fatty, tender things. Yeah. Right? Like I'll go through a whole day or like, let's say even just half a day. And I'm like, I honestly, I only have time to put a few bites in my mouth sometimes. Yeah. Like, today, taking the kids to swim lessons, it was nuts. And I'm driving home, and I just have a few sips of kefir, but it's so enriching. Or sometimes I'll come home and I'll have just a couple bites, but it's pure back fat, drizzled in olive oil with like some raw onion. And I'm good to go for 5 more hours, you know, and I really enjoy those bites. And I'm not famished. I don't have sugar, you know, imbalances happening. It's just, it's satisfying every part of what I need.
Yeah. It's a special kind of efficiency. It's the efficiency of modesty.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Jane Grixon has one line in her book on vegetables, or vegetable encyclopedia, basically, where everything's alphabetized. She says that something about, it's just a passing phrase, the small home garden, you know, is an assertion of delight in the human scale. And I love that. It's a humility, but humility as a mean, not an excess or a deficiency. It's in the human scale. I feel like we're always trying to upscale and to produce more than the human scale, right? And what is the human scale? I feel like, well, what feeds a household? Delight in that. Like, that's okay. That's good stuff. You don't need to feel like it's indulgent or in fact, it's actually a discipline to take out time and put aside lots of effort and resource to delighting in the family meal. And you can do that without it's not excessive, you know, and because everything happens around the family table.
I know.
Everything.
And our culture just wants to wipe that away.
Everything happens around the pig trough too. With pig societies.
That's true.
It's the same thing.
Exactly. I mean, we are rational animals. So everything, you're right. Everything happens around mealtime.
Behaviors. Giving and receiving.
That's how we teach our children manners that they can extrapolate to all our areas of life. And receiving, like one thing I've had to do.
Thank you.
I did, totally. I've had during snack time, you know, that's when I have a snack time with the kids, and I don't let them reach in the bowl anymore. I give it to them, and that little tiny practice has really helped them. Because when they're reaching, then they're also calculating, and they're like, "Oh, what's bigger? I'm gonna make sure he gets the smaller one," you know. And they're like,
jockeying again.
Yeah. Anyway, that's just a little example, but.
Yeah, the longer we, travel down this crazy road of eating 3 meals a day with our kids as a family, the more essential become, by sheer force, table manners. Yeah. This is not like some snooty imposition from a puritanical school marm or something, or it is essential. If we're going to eat anything, we must abide by some certain rules, or else it just devolves so quick, so effortlessly. And I think you could maybe get away with it in a smaller family, but not here. Not with 6 high energy kids. Like the manners, and it's not a horrible discipline. If it is, then that's my fault in the way I enforce it. But it's when we do it, it is actually the key to delight. Yeah. It's like, oh, now we can actually enjoy each other and the food.
And we're all enjoying each other, not just the couple of
me monsters in the room.
Yes, exactly. The high men on the totem pole. Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about this. One time I heard a criticism of the Von Trapps, The
Sound of Music fame.
The Sound of Music fame. Yeah, I've read all of her actual books, so I'm kind of a fangirl. But her husband was a Navy submarine, like, high officer. Yeah. Like, captain. I don't know what Captain Von Trapp. And someone was kind of criticizing their family, like they had too much structure, too much rigidity, because he's just this...
He's a military guy.
Oppressive military guy. Yeah. And I kind of jumped on it, and that's why I'm actually off Facebook now. Not for this specific instance, but like I have trouble, and I don't know how to regulate myself, so I'm just off. But I had such a hard time because you have to have some of that discipline in a family on a purely practical level.
It's just survival.
We're not trying to squash people. We're trying to help people like realize their potential. And discipline is freedom, right? Like Jocko Willink says. And so anyway, it's across. It works in the military. It works at mealtime.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of have to. The rules will help. You do kind of want to free them from their baser desires that they don't know.
Yeah.
They haven't disciplined them yet.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they will just be enslaved to those. And that's no good.
Yeah.
It's not good for
them.
them.
And in the case of kids, they're asking for walls and boundaries. They're feeling in the dark.
That's why they're constantly looking for them, testing them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, why did I bring all that up? Julia Child's teaching me how to enjoy small amounts of everything.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good way to live, way to cook.
Yeah, it's also harder, I think, to indulge if you put so much work into your food. You know, I've been asked that before. Like, how do you avoid excess, either in like whiskey or pipe tobacco or something? It's like, well, it's, at least for me, I don't know if this is a universal rule, but it is, take it super seriously. The answer might not necessarily for everyone be to, well, we just completely reject it. You know, we're going to be utterly ascetic, which obviously has its place in the world and can be a good thing for sure. But I don't know. I feel like with food, dare to take it really seriously and see if you're actually able to be gluttonous. You know, it's actually a little harder than you might think. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times, the more time I spend on a meal, the less likely I am to actually eat all of it. It's weird. It's nourishing to cook for people, but it's just a different thing. The more time, I wouldn't call it indulgence. It's too much work for indulgence.
It's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
You can actually use that kind of language, I think.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So it's a discipline, but it's like a merry discipline. It's it's fruitful. It's not that hard if you just take the naive plunge into cooking every meal.
Yeah.
It has rewards.
All right. Well, it's time to wrap up. Okay. Thank you for joining me this afternoon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Meatsmiths, and hopefully we'll see you again. Remember, we've got our membership open and a free trial available if you'd like to take advantage of that. 60-day trial you type in the promo code box, or the Family Pig. We've still got a handful of tickets left. So thanks again, and have a great rest of your summer. Bye.
Bye.
You can receive updates on all our brand new content as it's released by signing up for our email newsletter. Free download of Brandon's thoughts on meat cookery included. Go to farmsteadmeatsmith.com and sign up on the homepage. Thanks again for listening, and keep in touch.